Welcome to Civilian Carry Radio, a proud member of the Firearms Radio Network. This show is brought to you by our sponsor, Big Tex Outdoors. Big Tex Outdoors is mainly focused on high-quality tactical EDC gear. They offer 100% risk-free shopping. That means if you change your mind for any reason, they will fully refund and the full purchase price, shipping costs, and pay for the return shipping. So total risk-free shopping, folks. On top of that, most of their orders ship in 24 hours or less. Some of their items ship for as little as $1.99. They're an FFL 3 or FFL Class 3 SOT, so they sell suppressors, SBRs, and other NFA items. Check out their website, bigtexoutdoors.com, and please use this code CCRadio for a 15% discount at checkout. And remember, folks, risk-free shopping. Our goal and focus of this podcast is to spread the message to everyday people, the importance of the Second Amendment, firearms safety, education, training, and mindset. Remember, folks, you and only you are responsible for your safety, of your protection, and your loved ones. Folks, our mission statement is gun ownership is your right, safety and education are your responsibility. We have 3 rules on our podcast. 1 is no cussing, 2 is no drinking, and 3, no politics, because gun rights and the right to self-protection is a God-given human right. I'm your host and producer, Baraka James, along with my 2 awesome co-hosts, Alan Sams and the lovely Miss Tatiana. And Tatiana is also the director at a Girl and a Guns Women Shooting League at www.girlandagun.org. Good evening, Alan. Good evening, Tatiana. How are you two?
Great.
Doing wonderful.
Awesome, folks. We have our 2 guest co-hosts tonight, Mr. Lee Weems. He's law enforcement officer, chief deputy, and owner of First Person Safety. Good evening, Lee. How are you?
I am great. I'm glad that the show is today, so now that I know it's Wednesday.
Right? A little normalcy we try to provide here, right, folks? And also we have Mr. Ashton Ray, U.S. Navy vet and owner of 360 Performance Shooting. Good evening, Ashton. How are you?
I'm great. Great to be back.
All right, we're glad to hear. We're glad to have you here. Folks, we are listener-funded radio, and you, the listeners and viewers, make this program possible. You can contribute to the show via Patreon for as little as $1 per episode or as much as you like by going to www.patreon.com/CC Radio or clicking the link here in our show notes. A huge shout-out to our $10 Patreon pledges, Mark B., Young Pei Chang, Greg G., our $5 Patreon pledges, Christopher D., Rob J., CJ, James W., R. Russ A., Ira S., Rob C., Michael G., Eric B., Mark E., ATI Guns, John W., On-Site Firearms Training, Scott D., Kirk C., David C., FPF Training, William T., and David K. We want to say a huge thank you to all the people who are currently pledging their support through Patreon. Your support helps contribute to the show, our goal of educating people on the importance of the Second Amendment, firearms education, mindset, safety, and training. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or Civilian Carry Radio and or their employees. Viewer discretion is advised, especially on live shows. Folks, a quick message from our platform that we currently use to provide the show to you. A friendly heads up. Platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and internet service providers are currently seeing unprecedented levels of traffic because of COVID-19. As a result, they're having more issues than usual. Keep this in mind if you run into any issues over or lag on the coming weeks when we're doing our show. We appreciate your patience with us during this time and your continued support. If you have any issue, check out the down detector link here in our show notes. That basically shows you if any site is having lag or having, a high amount of traffic that's causing an outage or anything. Tonight, our guest, we welcome back Mr. Tom Gibbons, owner of Rangemaster, who first appeared on our 20th show streamed live on July 5th, 2017. He made his second appearance on our 130th show streamed live on February 5th, 2020. Both links are here in our show notes. Our topic tonight is lifelong learning, continuing education for instructors. And folks who have been following the show for a long time, you can see Tom's extensive bio here in our show notes, and also by checking out the previous 2. And also check out rangemaster.com, www.rangemaster.com, or http://rangemaster.com. And also we have a link to Tom's new book on Amazon, Concealed Carry Self-Defense Tactics. So please check those out. And from here, I'll pass it off to our first question to Alan Sams. Go ahead, Al.
Before we jumped into the main topic of tonight, I just wanted to get your opinion, Tom, and maybe some advice for some other friends of ours in the training industry, as well as students. The effects of this whole COVID thing is probably something I'm assuming. I mean, we have never seen anything like this, and certainly nothing that we've had interrupt our daily lives the way this has. What have you decided you're going to do? How have you decided that you're going to continue doing what you're doing during this time period, and what could you suggest for other instructors, because like I say, a lot of our friends derive, part or all of their income from this. And I'm a business for myself, and you always have these things that you prepare for, and things that you're saving up for, or you're protecting against. And no one ever, you never thought it was going to be because I can't get near somebody else. So, what's your thoughts on it, and what are you guys doing, and what kind of advice do you have? And then we'll do something about the students after we get the trainer part out of the way.
Well, I wish I had a good answer for you. It's a very difficult situation. I had quite a few classes scheduled in March and April, and we had to cancel every one of them. That's one of our peak travel times. As you know, I do all my teaching on the road all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And with these travel restrictions and no groups larger than 10 and so forth and so on, social distancing and whatnot, we've had to cancel the tactical conference. It's the first time in 22 years that's happened. And all of my classes in April and March and April and the first part of May. I've got some classes going forward in mid-May, but that's the first that we'll be able to actually get out and do anything. Frankly, I don't think there's anything people like me that are full-time traveling trainers can actually do about that. For people that do a lot of entry-level training, I think this is a really good opportunity to take advantage of the internet. There's a lot of initial training that we would normally be doing, like in a classroom setting, with new people online, either by video or live on the internet. I think we can show people a good bit about firearm safety, mechanical operation, go over some proper gun handling skills, and at least prepare them for then an opportunity to get out and get some live hands-on training. You're not going to be able to do a really good job of teaching somebody how to shoot online, but there's a lot of background work that can be done. I think right now, while everybody's stuck at home, everybody's pretty much in the same boat. Everybody's basically under house arrest. So it's a good opportunity to do some exploring into the online teaching as opposed to in person.
Just go down the row. I mean, we got three other instructors on here. Tatiana, start with you, and then go through and just what are your guys' thoughts on the thing, and are you guys figured anything out?
I've ended up moving a lot of my lectures onto webinars and holding live webinars. That's been very well received. They've been selling out, but we're all having to get real creative, and keeping engaged with our audience and our participants is a real thing. So for those of us who live and pay our bills with the travel and training world, we've all taken a large hit from this. So I've done a lot of calls with my peers looking for how are we going to do this thing, Pete? And there's a lot of great digital tools that we're all making use of. It's not necessarily Zoom, but similar type platforms to work with groups and brainstorm. I'm seeing a lot of people co-participate in authoring articles, contributing to programs like the Digital A Girl and a Gun National Conference to spread their message. You're seeing a lot of instructors promoting each other and not viewing each other as competition, because we really are all in this together. And the sooner we realize that supporting each other in our local geographic regions, the more we do that, the stronger our community is going to grow, so that when us traveling trainers do come to town, we've heard of each other before, and our communities are welcoming of those people. So I'm seeing the community grow and build, the instructor community build in a really intelligent way, in a way I've not seen before, and that's really encouraging. How we reach past working with and for each other and getting a hold or getting access to these, almost 4 million new gun owners That's where the opportunity lies, in my opinion, because these individuals are actively online Google searching for solutions. And there's a lot of bad solutions that are readily available at the top 2 pages of Google searches. So it's time for us to level up, those of us putting out good material, those of us that are well credentialed and are professionals, to make sure that our websites are actually coming up first and showing up where they belong, and that we're not getting trumped by, some shoddy knowledge, because we need to make sure that we're not just quietly, sitting on the back burner. And I've been trying so hard to encourage some of my peers to get your website up, please. Like, please get your website up. How can I help you get your social media thing active? How can I make sure people find you and not the guy who just hung a shingle outside and is screaming louder than you are, and people are finding him first? These people that are resources, how do we make sure that they're findable truly? And then how do we get them to present material in a way that's going to be tangible to those first-time gun owners? I mean, that's where the opportunity is for us to survive and thrive through this, financially and with the knowledge-based growth.
Cool. Which one are y'all next?
Sure, I'll go. Well, this has been a big learning curve in a lot of ways. Both Tom and Tatiana have touched on this in a significant way, and I don't want to cover the same ground. One of the things that I do, aside from having a regular day job and also running 360, is I teach college class. I teach classes at a local college, and we had to go completely online, right? Of course, you can't have students in a classroom, and much of what we had to do was hands-on, included labs and so on and so forth. So I had to learn how to get that material out to those folks. And one of the things that's kind of in the way for me doing that as far as the gun business goes is having the tools to do so, because the stuff that we're using at the college is very, very robust. It's been in play for a long time, and it's used through various cyber schools. It whether it's a college level online stuff or whether it's high school or middle school or what have you. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there, but it's really expensive to get into and try and get licenses for that to do for the stuff that we do that we're talking about tonight. But even just a platform like this, you can have a virtual classroom with one of these, right? You can do that, and there's a lot of functionality there. Something else that I've been doing is I've been doing a bunch of video coaching. And what's nice about that is when you're doing the technical shooting stuff, you don't have to be there in real time necessarily. Student can, or your client, I should say, can go out and video what they're doing and do some stuff. Maybe you give them a few things to do, a few drills to run, give them some framework to work within, and then if they have access to a range right now, of course. And then you can coach them up. They can work it dry. They can continue to do that. You can work them dry fire live with stream it on Facebook Live, or even one of these sort of websites that we've used. I don't know how many of these now, Alan and Baraka. We've used a bunch of different platforms here that are available. Mm-hmm. They seem to come and go, but they're all out there. So you can do a bunch of different things. The live fire stuff is a little more problematic because you both have to exist, as Dave would say, sort of in the same time and space, although you're only connected via the internet. But you can, one of the things that's provided flexibility is when you get that video packet delivered to you, you can go and look at it, then you give them that feedback later, and then they can go work on it tomorrow or whatever. So you don't have to have that. It gives you a little bit more flexibility as far as not having to have an appointment made where everybody has to be at the same place at the same time.
Lee?
Well, the firearms training business is job number 3 for me. Job number 2 is, I like Alan, Ashton, I teach college classes. And then job number 1 is with the sheriff's office. unfortunately, I had to shave off the facial hair for PPE, so I lost 30% of my firearms knowledge due to the COVID crisis. And so maybe I'll grow it back this summer, so I'll actually be able to instruct once this is all over. I had to cancel a class at the outset of this. I've got a couple of classes just beyond what are our current emergency shelter orders that I'm hoping are going to be able to go. We'll just have to wait and see on what the situation is. Really and truly, I'm not doing a lot with the business of that, but just because I can't due to other commitments. What I'm doing is with some of the time is working on some other projects, and then I may get down to the range and finally shoot some promotional videos and some instructional videos that I just never have had the time to do previously.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
one thing I've been doing since I've had more free time than I've had in the last 10 years in the last few weeks. So I've polished PowerPoints and updated manuals and just spend a good bit of time updating materials. So when we do start teaching again, there'll be a lot of new stuff.
Cool. And then my follow-up, then I'll let Lee, get it kicked off with the main part of, what we had planned. So we've seen unprecedented numbers of new gun owners as well as gun sales. And obviously, even if they wanted to get training, those people aren't able to do that. So what is some advice people can give to new gun owners, or if we get, new gun owners hear this, what's the bare minimum they should be trying to get exposed to or learn or see demonstrated to them, when we've got all these new gun owners? What are they supposed to be doing?
Well, obviously the most important part of it is to get some basic safety instruction. I'm not sure where they're going to get that. As Tatiana said, you got to be really careful about where you get your stuff. But just simple things that we take for granted, like how to load and unload the gun. An amazing number of these new gun buyers have literally never touched a gun before. They don't know how to safely and correctly even load the thing or unload it, check it to see what its status is. So there are some books. There's lots of video material available, but again, you're going to have to find some way for them to curate and find out what's credible and what's not. But I would think the first priority is just some basic safety training, how to store the thing at home, how to handle it correctly, so that we don't have a tidal wave of preventable tragedies among all these first-time gun buyers. I'm an old guy. I'll turn 68 this year. When I was a kid in the 60s, in my state, basic firearms training, live firearms training was mandatory for males and elective for females to get out of high school. And so we had a completely different culture 50 years ago about firearms usage. We get kids in police academy now that've never seen a gun in person before they show up to the academy, and we're expected to teach them how to competently carry a pistol. I think we're going to find a lot of these new gun owners in that same boat where they've suddenly got a gun, and it's like somebody's never driven a car and never ridden in one, hand them an automobile and said, "Now go make this work." A lot of people that are somewhat opposed to making everybody get training say, people get along just fine every day without training. Yeah, a lot do. A lot of these first-time gun owners are going to take the gun home, put it in the sock drawer of the closet, and forget about it. And over the next few years, there'll probably be a lot of very little used guns on the market. But the sad reality is that there are an awful lot of preventable tragedies every single week in this country from people handling guns incorrectly, not necessarily with bad intent, just not knowing what the hell they're doing. And I think right now the biggest priority for entry-level trainers should be to get at least some basic safety knowledge out to some of these new owners.
Well, Tom, something I did in the past couple of weeks, there was a friend of a friend who absolutely had to have his first gun right now, and I wasn't willing to accept the risk of dealing with somebody that I didn't know and all that kind of stuff. My wife being the risk factor she is with the virus and everything. So I did sell him a shotgun. I was willing to do that, But I had that same concern that y'all are talking about. This is a fellow that's never owned a gun before. He really doesn't have any real useful experience in any way. So I solved that pretty easily. I gave him a DVD by some fella. You may have heard of him. His name's Tom Givens. I gave him the Rangemaster Shotgun DVD and told him he had to watch it 3 times before he ever put a shell in that shotgun.
Well, if he's got an IQ higher than the cabbage, he should probably be okay. But that's exactly the sort of thing. You know, what's the first topic on that tape? It's safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Safely handle the thing. We get into how to load it, unload it, and reload it before we ever even get into shooting technique. I think that's the kind of stuff that's just critically important for these people. You know, I shudder to think of someone with no firearms knowledge whatsoever, and you have a sudden emergency, somebody's kicking on the front door, or whatever. How's he expected to figure out how to use a weapon, whether it's a shotgun, handgun, whatever it may be? I have people all the time. I've run into people over the years that, they buy a gun, take it off, put it in a sock drawer, and the mentality is, if there's a sudden life-threatening crisis, I'll figure it out. Well, no, you're not going to figure it out. That's a little too late to be preparing at that point.
Yeah,
I'd add to that too, that in our current situation, I've been doing quite a bit of online private lessons for brand new gun owners. And they all want to jump in. Some of them sign up for like the concealed carry, like tell me how to carry concealed. And I'm like, all right, so how long have you been shooting? Well, I just got this gun. I've never shot it. I'm like, all right. So let's talk about firearm safety. But before we even talk about that, we talk about dry fire safety. They've never even heard of dry fire before. So before we even start talking about how to handle the gun, how to unbox the gun, we talk about what's required of your environment and your space and you and your household. We talk about what are safe directions, what surfaces manifest as safe directions and not. We rewind even past the point where most of us think would be the starting place if you were at the range. And now all those firearm safety rules have to be relevant to them in a way that is very, very tangible, that many people have to then learn how to translate from the range to home. So these folks have a unique opportunity to start their learning journey in their actual home environment and make the safety rules actually relevant and apply to their households, and then go to the range and learn them at the range. And that's the flip, that's an inverse of what so many of us that have been in this for a while are accustomed to. And I'm finding that the conversations are really a lot more meaningful because, what's beyond your target? Well, that wall of, that's an adjoining wall to my kid's room. Maybe that's not a safe direction, is it? And they're like, nope, definitely not. That opens up their awareness to, their concepts and misconceptions of what home defense could be or look like. And that first private lesson that was supposed to be about concealed carry ends up being a really logistical conversation about ballistics and what the capabilities of the gun are. And they have a real, I'll say, come to Jesus moment where they're like, wow, I think I realize how much I need now. And they've got a real clear directive and a clear learning path. And it's a much more meaningful starting place, I think. And this is, again, it's kind of a unique opportunity given the fact that we have to train this way.
The biggest problem with a lot of new gun owners is they don't know what they don't know. They have no idea how complicated and involved this whole process can be. They watch TV all their life, so you pick it up, point in the general direction of the bag, and pull the trigger. And there's a bit more to it than that.
Well, that's not necessarily just new gun owners. That could be untrained gun owners. Chris Baker of Lucky Gunner put together a great video for the new shotgun owner. And knowing what's going on in the market right now, I posted that video on a couple of local forums, for people like, hey, if you're having friends and family and coworkers that are reaching out to you right now, asking you for help, and if you can't meet with them to do it, here's a great video on the loading and unloading of a shotgun, basic operations or whatever. And it's a very well done video. All of us on the panel know Chris and know his background and know that he's extremely well trained. Well, holding Winchester Model 12 here, in Chris's video, he suggested instead of wrapping the thumb over the stock, to lay it alongside the stock on the strong hand thumb to avoid smacking yourself in the nose during recoil. All right, that's not new. I took my first shotgun class in 1999, and that was one of the suggestions that was made. Well, a couple of guys seeing this video just go nuts over that apoplectic on it, start tearing it down. One of them even followed me to another forum where I had posted it to carry the argument there. And finally, I just said, folks, here's my training and background. Here's Chris's training and background. I finally had to basically dare the other guy to post his lack of training and background. He was an armed security guard in the 90s, guys. Excuse me, the 80s. And, compare what you're seeing here from educated, trained people versus some guy who's had a gun since the 1980s. And I think that's one of the big things out there with the market. It's not just I bought a gun. It's I've had this gun sitting in my closet, and now I think I might actually have to use it. What do I do with it?
Tim wants to know. Reedy wants to know if it was Gecko 45.
That's what I was laughing at.
No, Gecko 45 may actually have more firearms knowledge than these two guys.
Well, I'll let you go ahead and take it away, Lee.
All right. This was supposed to be the post-tac gun extravaganza where we discussed everything that happened. But since Alan wasn't going to be able to come to TACCon and Tom had to cancel the whole thing, Baraka said, hey,
Alan. Thanks, Alan.
Everybody out there in Gunland, it's all Alan's fault.
Everybody thank Alan.
That's right. We cooked up this whole virus conspiracy to cover for Alan.
Cool.
Yeah. So Baraka asked for suggestions. And so I said, why don't we talk about lifelong learning for firearms instructors and continuing education? And I know, Tom, you are a big advocate of not staying stale. I know you try to take a couple of classes each year. From other instructors, I would like for you to kind of address while you continue after almost 50 years in the business, why you continue to take training from other people. And then I know you and John Hearn and I had a very unique experience back in February from a conversation of us sitting around trying to figure out from a video of what a particular instructor was teaching. They were like, you know what? Why don't we go to his class and get it firsthand? So, Tom?
Remind me about that in a few minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, especially if you teach at any level at all, to get outside your own organization constantly. One of the biggest problems we see in a lot of law enforcement training is the guys that are doing the training today were taught by the guys that came on 10 years before them, that were taught by the guys that came on 10 years before them, that were taught by the guys that came on 10 years before them. It's kind of like a puppy mill. After 3 or 4 generations, everybody's retarded. And we wind up with really poor training. And I see the same thing in a lot of private sector training. If you've got an instructor who hasn't taken a class from somebody else in the last 10 or 15 years, how does he keep up with new technique, new equipment? One of the things as a trainer, when you go take a class from somebody else, is you get to hear essentially the same information, but phrased differently. Sometimes you can explain something to a student 3 times, 3 different ways. They still give you that little cockhead puppy look. And then you tell them the 4th way and the light bulb comes on and they suddenly understand. Well, for a relatively new trainer especially, it's really hard to come up with multiple ways to explain a technique. But if you go and train with different instructors, you'll hear different explanations of the same technique, and then you can work those into your curriculum. So I think that's important. When you go to a class as a participant, you get to see a lot of people with different guns. If you go to a pistol class, you'll see handguns unlike the one you carry and holsters unlike the one you use, with magazine pouches unlike the one you use. So you get a broader experience of what works, what doesn't, what's new equipment, what's useful in new equipment, what's not necessarily useful. That's an important thing to me. No matter how good you are, errors creep in. So when you got somebody else watching you and coaching, critiquing, it's easier to correct errors than it is to try to find them on your own, which a lot of times we're completely unaware of them until somebody points them out, and then we can fix them. And so I think all of those things are important. I started teaching part-time in 1975, and I've been teaching full-time since 1996. And I still try to go to at least 2 classes a year from someone outside my organization in order to keep current, see new technology, catch any new training techniques somebody's come up with. The trainers that I go take classes from do the same thing. So they go pick up something from somebody else, then I get it from them. And one trainer calls it cross-pollination. It's just a really good way to spread current information around. 2018, I took Ernest Langdon's pistol class, which I'd been trying to do for years. All of us that travel to train have essentially the same schedule because there's only so many weekends a year that don't have a Mother's Day or a Thanksgiving or Father's Day or something in them. So I always had a conflict with Ernie's schedule. Finally had the stars aligned. I was able to take it. And he immediately spotted something I was doing I wasn't aware of. When he pointed out to me, my shooting improved. Hell, I've been doing this a long time. But that's one of the values of that. I took Gabe White's class later in the same year and picked up several tidbits that we immediately worked into our program with attribution to Gabe. But the man's a genius, and being able to train with him, I was able to pick up things that I hadn't thought of, ways to phrase things I hadn't thought of in one major thing. Last year, I took a revolver class. I took a immediate trauma care class. Took some other low light training. Got another instructor. So I think that's absolutely critical. If you're thinking of training with somebody and asking when's the last time you went to a class as a student, it's 10, 20 years ago, I'd be a little leery of training with that guy. Also, the other thing you mentioned a minute ago, back in February, Lee and John Hearn and I took Dave Spalding's pistol class, which is another one I've been trying to get to for years. I've known Dave for years, but just weren't able to get in one of his classes. He doesn't teach that many of them, and they always conflict with mine. But we made things happen, and the three of us got there. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that, aside from all the things I've already mentioned, is that I had read several people's accounts on the internet, and I had a few people tell me in person that Dave teaches this, Dave teaches that, and I thought, surely not. That sounds kind of goofy. So then I said, well, let's just go find out. So we went and took his class, and sure enough, no, that's not what he teaches. Unfortunately, things tend to get translated. I've run into the same thing. I've had people tell me I do this and I do that. And I said, well, I've been in most of the classes I've taught, and I don't think that's what I said. That's another reason to go directly to the source, see exactly what the guy teaches and what his rationale is for it. Did I immediately adopt everything Dave showed me? No. Did I see a lot of value in it, especially for somebody who's just starting out? Yes. And more importantly, I got to see exactly what he does and exactly why he does it, and get his full rationale for it. So to me, that was well worth the time and expense involved.
Hey, Ashton and Tatiana, do y'all want to grab a listener's question before we do each of your own personal questions so we can get some of them?
Yeah, no problem. I'll start at the top. Matthew Dropko has a question. He asks, what's a common issue or problem that runs through most beginner classes that at the end the students found out how to do something a different or better way that made them more accurate or just a safer shooter?
Usually it's fixing somebody's grip issues is a very, very common thing that causes immediate improvement in your shooting. And the whole concept of doing things simultaneously, it's when the gun fires and you see the front sight lift, you can be resetting the trigger and realigning the front sight and doing that at the same time, not doing it sequentially, which eats up time. There are just a lot of little things like that. But I think probably the one issue that creates more rapid improvement for more people than anything else is cleaning up their grip and their trigger control.
You can go ahead and do one of yours now, Ashton.
Okay. So going into the whole lifelong learning as an instructor thing, aside from going out and taking classes from other instructors, which I learned from you a long time ago is hugely important, and I continue to do all the time. What sort of process do you use to vet that information? Right? How do you sort of sift what it is that you see that's maybe something new or different? How do you evaluate that? Because you mentioned that you went and took a class and you said, hey, this is good stuff, I'm putting it in right away. But how do you decide what goes and what stays?
Well, I think the key is to actually be there in person and do it. I'm not relying on what somebody says about it or what you see in a brief video clip, which might be, a minute. By actually being in the class and doing what the guy says and applying the technique, you get an opportunity to sense, is this something I personally can use? Is this something I can teach to other people? And you get to weigh it on its merits really quickly when you're actually doing it. I think that's the most productive way to evaluate a new technique or teaching, is to actually be there in person doing it and watching the rest of the line and doing it yourself and seeing just exactly how does this work out. Sometimes you'll see something, you say, no, that just doesn't work for me. Or you can look up and down the line and say, it's just not working, period.
One of the things I've seen, Tom, is I've seen other instructors deal with things that I haven't dealt with before very often, or maybe more often I'll see something that they're helping a student with a problem that they're having that I've never had, because maybe their hands are smaller than mine, or their stature is smaller than mine, or maybe they're just big and gigantic, or whatever. There's a situation I've never run into personally that I never had to sift through as a shooter, that maybe I hadn't run into or tried to help somebody with. Those are some of the things that I really like to see, is how they coach, right? How they coach people maybe that they're cross dominant. I mean, I've run into 2 or 3 people now, only one of them when I was teaching, but 2 of them when someone else was teaching, that really didn't have a dominant eye. Those people are pretty rare, but they exist. And how to deal with that's kind of a sticky thing. And I learned a lot from watching other guys that were pretty dang good at this deal with that.
Yeah. I've had a number of instructor courses. I've been through the FBI's, the Army's, the NRA law enforcement side, the NRA civilian side. Been to quite a few of them over the years. And I have learned far more in taking classes from other professional instructors as a student at user level classes than I have in all of those instructor classes put together. I would think probably 2 or 3 classes I've taken as a student and just as an operator level class, I've learned more than all of those instructor classes put together. As I said earlier, you get to see additional equipment, you get to see additional techniques. Typical class, you got 20 people, you'll have every size, height, build, big hands, little hands. You'll have just about all of those variables present in class. So once you've been to 3 or 4 classes like that, you've seen 40, 60, 80 people with different equipment and different backgrounds, and seeing these different instructors deal with them is very instructive, as you mentioned. I think going to a couple of classes like that as a student, if you pay attention, you're not just there to eat up time, but you pay attention to what's going on. I think you can learn a great deal.
Yeah, most often you're not there to figure out how to break the front sight press code. You're there to see how it is that they structure things, right. How the order that they do things in, and how they present it. That's the nuance that really starts to help, that I've found.
Right. When I went to Gabe White's class, for instance, Gabe does the same class over and over again, just like the rest of us do, but he has a printed lesson plan that he actually physically has on the line with him and refers to, writes notes in. And to me, that's one of the marks of a real professional. He's not winging it. He's not going by memory or making it up as he goes. He's got a structured plan, and he executes it very well. He's very organized. And that's the sort of thing that I would like people to go and see and then model in their own instructional programs.
Just one quick follow-on comment to something Tom said right there. Of all, you go to all these instructor level classes, I think I'm up to 5 or 6 institutional level instructor classes. When I say institutional level, I'm talking FBI, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training, etc. And much of the material of those classes is how to run a class, how to run a line of shooters, how to administer a course of fire. They are not aimed at how to coach an individual shooter. That's a very small portion of that. And I personally have picked up more in classes from people like Tom and Dave Spalding, how they present the material, how they deal with an issue that arises in a class, and then being able to take that and applying that to when I'm actually on a line with shooters and coaching a shooter. I think that's one big difference between, say, Tom's instructor class, where the whole time you're coaching an individual shooter and being evaluated on that, versus you're running a group of people through a qualification course.
Yeah, the reality is most of the institutional schools are preparing people to be qualification course graders, not instructors. They're just scorekeepers, basically. Count the bullet holes, write it down on the form, and move on. It's more about how to safely run a line through a qualification course to get everybody's box checked and send them on their way. It's not so much about teaching them how to excel.
Tatiana?
So we have another question. This one comes from Tim Reedy. He asks, what's your guidance for improving performance for a student once they've mastered safety, manipulations, and accuracy? How do you coach someone to sub 20-second casino drills?
Well, you work on one thing at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What we like to do is observe the guy and look for, there are typically more than one error going on. One of the primary mistakes I see newer instructors make is overcoaching, trying to fix too many things at one time. So we pick out one thing. Now, obviously, if it's a safety issue, that's the one thing. But if it's not a safety issue, it's a technique issue, you pick the one thing that would make the biggest improvement in his shooting and work on that first. Then the guy's shooting improves. He gets a little self-confidence. This is mostly the subconscious level. And then he's able to progress a lot faster. But if you try to tell a guy, you need to move that foot, you need to change the way your thumb is over here, and you need to get your trigger finger out a little bit more, he's not going to remember any of it. What he just simply does is get frustrated and shut off. Just like turning his electric gears off, he's not going to hear a thing after that. So you pick the one item at a time. You pick the one item that would make the biggest improvement if the guy fixed it. And then when you fix that, then you take the number 2 item, fix that, and then you take the number 3 item, fix that. But don't try to fix more than one thing at one time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Now, Tom, when you go to take a class, and I know when I go, and I love taking other instructors' classes because I guarantee you I'm gonna push to the point where I am not the best shooter in the class. I want to go there and I want to make not a mess, but I want to find out where my boundaries are at the moment and live in that space for a little while. So I end up taking 2 notebooks. I take a notebook for what am I getting from this, and then I've got another notebook with some awesome stuff from, what are these people, or the instructor and the AI. I love watching how instructors and AIs, the dynamic between those 2 people, or the support crew for the lead instructor on the line. What kind of rapport, what kind of language, verbal, nonverbal language are they using to manage their groups? There's the technical hands-on one-on-one, and then there is the event management that can reach a level of sophistication that's really impressive. Well-oiled machine and team is amazing. So I keep those 2 separate notebooks so that I can keep my thoughts separate and I can flip the coin on myself. What are some of the things that you do to record and track and, document the volume of knowledge that you have as you go through these classes as a student?
Well, being an old dude, I don't take notes on my phone like most people do nowadays. I keep a little pocket notebook and pen. And when somebody says something I think is really quote worthy, I write it down immediately. I've reached a point where if I get one quote out of a class, or if I get one little technique nudge out of a class, I feel like I've got my money's worth. So I take physical notes, even on the line. When I can, I'll whip my phone out, take photographs of anything that you could record well photographically, as long as it's okay with the instructor. But mostly I just keep physical notes, and then at the end of the day, when I go back to the hotel, I'll flesh them out while it's still fresh in my mind. I think if you wait till a couple of days after class, you've probably forgotten all but about 40% of it. So I try to take notes that I can then turn into more coherent notes later on that same night. And then after the class, I'll sit down over the next couple of days, go back through them, and flesh it out a little more if it's something I really think is useful.
Tom,
Cool.
you were talking a little bit before about your methodology of coaching, And Lane Thayer has a question in the chat that ties into that. I think it's the right time to do it. He asks, what can the newly credentialed instructor do to increase his ability to diagnose and coach shooters, as well as create good and beneficial content and become more than just that target scorer that you talked about? And follow on, how do you get stagnant instructors to want to be more than a body wearing a red shirt?
I think the single best way to get good at this is to AI under an established instructor, like what you might almost call an apprenticeship. Lee and Ashton are both good examples. They've AI'd a number of classes for me over the last several years, and I'd be willing to bet every time one of you guys assists a class, you learn something. What do you say?
Allegedly. I've taken more notes in the classes I've AI'd than when I took them the first time.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that we as I've gotten older, someday I'm going to retire. But as I've gotten older now, I've put more emphasis into teaching new instructors. So, I don't teach entry level stuff at all anymore. And most of my classes nowadays are some level of instructor development. And people who graduate from those and do well in them, if I'm back in their geographic area, sometimes I invite them to come in AI. And I've had an awful lot of them tell me, I learned more helping you teach this class than when I took this class. And you're able to detach a little bit. You're not under the stress of constantly loading and shooting and worrying about your own performance. And once you've had the material and then you come back and try to help teach the material, I think that's when you actually start to absorb it, make sense out of it, make context out of it. So I think probably the very best thing a new trainer could do is latch onto a couple of older, more experienced trainers and assist them with classes several times. Build up from it. You hear the material over and over again. You start, I don't want to say memorizing it, but becoming much more familiar with it, much more comfortable with it. The only way you get experience coaching people is coaching people. It's really that simple. But if you're coaching people under the direction of a more experienced instructor, you're more likely to do it right. And then you're repeating doing it right, and you learn how to do it well. So I think that's probably the single most important thing. Once you've had an instructor class or two, stop taking those classes for a bit and go assist. And I think you'll learn a lot more, a lot quicker that way.
And something else is.
So we got a question from Ron.
One real quick thing, Alan. So something else that you have to see somebody that's really good at coaching before you know what good coaching looks like. Right. I was really spoiled. One of the first open enrollment classes I took as a student was with Todd Green. And he's honestly the guy when it comes to coaching that I'm trying to grow up to be someday. I want to hopefully someday approach the level of coaching that he was able to lay down. And then later on, Tom, whenever I took my first course with you, I saw, oh look, somebody else that's really good at this. This is awesome. So I think finding not just somebody doing it, but somebody doing it that's really good at it is really a big part of it too.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how simple and elemental a lot of the stuff is that people don't think of when they're brand new to this. The first thing we teach new cops is watch their hands, because they can't hurt you without using their hands. Whether it's a rock or a rifle, they can't hurt you with it unless they get it in their hands. Well, the same thing applies to coaching students. They can't hurt themselves, and they can't hurt anybody else on the line without involving their hands. They can't present the gun without their hands. They can't get the gun on target without their hands. They can't work the controls on the gun, including the trigger, without their hands. So one of the things I see lacking in brand new instructors a lot of times is trying to see the whole picture. They're trying to look at the guy from head to toe. And the majority of the time, what you need to be looking at are his hands. You can see so much. You see the tendons flex on the back of the hand, and the guy's milking the grip. You can see trigger finger placement if you just look. Does he have hand-to-hand contact and the thumbs out of the way of the controls? You have to look. So it takes a bit of work to do that. So when I'm working with new coaches, new assistants, that's one of the things I harp on. You watch that guy's hands, look and see what that guy's doing with his trigger finger. Watch that guy over there tends to take his support hand off the gun between shots. You don't see any of that stuff unless you know to look for it. And that's one of the things I think apprenticing, if you will, under a more experienced instructor is critical for.
All right, so Ryan McCann wants to know when and why did the acceptable accuracy standards for institutional training begin to start going downhill? Was there one particular catalyst?
Yeah, it's always been that way. It's just a progression. We got the no cop left behind mentality nowadays, so you got to make things easy enough for the lowest common denominator in the department to still pass. So there's no incentive for excellence in most places. There are exceptions, but in most places it's not really. So I could spend a whole night telling you horror stories about that. What's the most common injury among police firearms instructors?
Oh, I know.
It's a bad back from continually lowering the bar.
If you apprentice for Tom, you get to hear that about 6 or 7 times a year.
Yeah, you hear that a good bit.
Unfortunately, it's true.
I want to see the remainder of my time to the gentleman from Georgia because I want to hear the story for Tim's question.
Oh gosh, I got to find Tim's question in the.
Hey guys, I apologize real quick. Have you guys seen some of the? I don't know if it's showing on the screen for you guys because I have the master control. But have you guys gotten these questions that have come through Facebook from Chris Johnson, Eric Tweed, Misha Tactical Arms, Bo Smith?
Holy moly, there's a lot there.
Okay.
I'll start looking at those.
Thank you, man. I was away dealing with this terrorist number 2 groundhog, so I'm stepping back out again. I'll tell you guys later. Don't worry.
All right. Well, I just found Tim Reedy's question. Tim wants to ask how you deal with class hosts who have bizarre shower controls and freezing rooms with hidden blankets.
I'm tough. I just put, it's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
There you go. And I have an off-topic question from Tiffany. But if I ask Tiffany's question, that means I get to mention her, which I just did. So this episode now counts for Tiffany Podcast Bingo.
Plus another cherub gets its wings because you mentioned
right.
Tiffany's name.
Tiffany wants to know how Jack is doing.
He's amazing. Jack is a little dog that we've brought into the home a couple of months ago who was born completely blind, and he's driving the other 3 nuts. He can chase them at full speed across the yard and tackle them and wrestle them and do just about everything a normal dog does. Apparently, he didn't get the memo that he's handicapped. He's completely blind and doesn't know it.
Cool.
He's doing fine.
Alan, you got one of those questions to go to?
So yeah, I was gonna say, guys, if you guys can, I don't know if
we've been
Alan,
working
have you seen the? Okay, cool. The Facebook one, do you have, brother?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll grab one. Chris Johnson asked, Tom, what's the average score overall on your students who take the instructor development course, between the shooting and the written test?
I wish I'd known that question was coming. I have that information somewhere. Hang on a second. I just happen to have that in front of me. I was just looking at it the other day. Out of the last 20 instructor classes, they averaged 97.0 on the FBI qualification, 96.3% on ours, and 94.6 on the written test. So that's over the last 20 instructor courses. A little something I do periodically just to see how we're doing. See if the numbers are staying or tracking the same over the years and whatnot. Over that batch of classes, we had an 11% washout rate. So I'd say that's probably about where it should be. It's the class, as you know, is not a gimme by any stretch, but we don't want it to be an impossible goal for people either. So I think an 11% failure rate is probably about right.
Is that down? I seem to remember you talking about a 15% rate at one time.
Yeah, we had a couple of really not fun classes a few years ago that kind of brought the numbers down a bit. That's unusual, but people just absolutely and totally unprepared to be an instructor level class. It's like, I've never dived. If I walked into a dive shop and said, I've never divin, but I'd like to be a dive instructor. That's kind of where some of these people were. Shouldn't be a real shock they didn't do well.
You know, on that instructor class thing, do you find that a lot of I mean, we all know just because you can do something well doesn't know you can teach it well. Like, just as a guesstimate, what percentage of really good shooters don't necessarily make the best instructor, and vice versa?
You know, I don't know. I don't know what percentage we could put on that, but you do actually see that. The people who are articulate and intelligent don't shoot too well, and there are people that shoot like a house of fire but couldn't teach you how to tie a shoe. So they get kind of weeded back out of the system, though.
Gotcha. I'll grab another one. Bill Armstrong wants to know what things would you recommend to look for in an instructor, host, and range, both as an instructor and a student, and what things to look to avoid?
Well, you need to go out to Bill's place and take a look at it and then do what Bill does. That's not a joke. Bill has done a lot of work on his particular ranges near Oklahoma City over the last couple of years, and he's made some real strides with it. One of the things he's done is he has actual indoor running water, flush toilet bathrooms right there at the range.
What? That's unheard of.
Yeah, step off the line into the bathroom. And, you know, we talk about getting ladies. I see Tatiana smiling in the background here. We talk about getting ladies involved in this. If the ladies are told, go around the other side of the berm there and find a bush, that's not going to fly. If you want to get them involved, you need an honest-to-God bathroom. There are very few places that have those nowadays, but I think that's something you're going to see more and more demand for. And Bill's done that. He's built a comfortable classroom with adequate lighting, adequate heating there, and adequate space for people to not be shoulder to shoulder while they're in the classroom environment. I think that's really important. He's maintained his range well. He's got the drainage down so he range and not standing ankle deep in water. So those are the kind of things you look for facility. For the host himself, you need someone who actually trains. I have over the years dealt with some hosts who then I get there and find out don't know anything about this stuff. I actually went to one range in Minnesota, and I got there and said, "Where are your target stands?" They said, "Oh, we don't have any." So how the hell do you run a range? I said, "Well, people bring their own." So, didn't you bring any? Well, no, I flew up from South Florida, so I really didn't bring a whole lot of target stands with me. So we had to hustle around and build some before class started. And so having a host who actually takes classes and understands what goes on in the class is very helpful. And then, like I said, as far as facility, look to Bill's operation and find out a lot about what to do. I teach everywhere from a bulldozed up berm in somebody's backyard to the FBI Academy and everything in between. And Bill's is up toward the upper end of in between there.
Yeah, Lane Thayer just sent me a comment wanting everyone to know that the toilet paper at Bill Armstrong's range is very soft.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Bill has put an awful lot of thought into that place over the last few years.
Yeah, I'll echo everything Tom's saying. That a friend of mine opened a range here in Georgia, Red Hill Range, and I gave him the same advice: working bathrooms, because that will increase your clientele dramatically. And so it was one of the first things he did. From a host standpoint, or from a traveling instructor standpoint, a host that will actually actively advertise and push the classes versus one that just listed on the webpage or somewhere saying, I'm having a class. Bill Armstrong, Mead Hall Range, just outside Oklahoma City, is very good at that. John Murphy in Virginia is fantastic at that. Carl Wren, just outside of Austin, Texas, are probably the three top-notch facilities as far as traveling to, and as far as just absolutely working to fill a class for a traveling instructor.
Yeah, Carl's another excellent example. Carl's been a high-level competitive shooter. He's a grandmaster in IPSC. He's been a presenter at TACCON for 20 years. Very highly trained, highly skilled shooter. So he knows what an instructor needs. And he teaches full-time there at his own school. So he has an idea of what an instructor needs in terms of physical facility, background support, marketing, and everything else. So having a host that's actively involved in the training business, I think is very, very helpful, rather than just some guy that owns a range and thinks it'd be nice to have classes there, which I run into periodically.
So, Tom, kind of along the marketing line, Mark Boynton of the Florida Boyntons, I believe, he's asking, how do you convince these new shooters to continue beyond the basic legal requirements and, explore that next level?
Well, the basic legal requirement here in Florida is a 4-hour class, and you can satisfy the firearms part by firing one round into a bullet trap. And it's nothing. It's basically just a way for the state to charge you for a small fee. I'm not sure how you convince these people. Hopefully people would be intelligent enough to realize that a 4-hour class that doesn't require any kind of shooting at all is not adequate for one of the very few things your average person can be involved in that is actually life and death, where actually their own life, their family members' lives, their ability to stay out of prison, their ability to stay out of the poorhouse is all predicated on them doing everything right if they ever reach for that gun. Wayne Dobbs said this one time, and I never forgot it. He said, every time that gun comes out of that holster, you're making life-altering decisions. Every time, whether you're on the range or in your bedroom doing dry work, you're on a street confrontation. Every time that gun comes out of the holster, you're making potentially life-altering decisions. And it baffles me that we have to explain to people that they need training. You would think an intelligent person would realize that. Nobody says, I think I'll go buy a parachute and jump out of a plane. I don't need any training for that. I'll just do it. I'll figure it out on the way down. Nobody does that. Nobody says, I'm going to go buy some diving equipment and go out in the deep part of the Gulf and jump in and see what happens. Nobody does that. But people say, well, I'll buy a gun, stick it in the sock drawer, and if there's a sudden life-threatening crisis, I'll figure it out. No, you won't. It just baffles me that we have to tell people that. So the answer to your question is, I don't know. I used to argue with my teachers in school. I don't know is the correct answer.
Kind of in line with that. How does someone honestly discover their shortcomings and then seek out the proper training to fill it? And I guess kind of what I'm alluding to is how do we defeat Dunning-Kruger? Because there's no end of the only thing that I can think of is competition. Competition definitely. If you've never seen it before, you can get it in classes. But if you're not training and stuff like that, you're not in those type of classes, you might not see it. But competition kind of might wake some people up. But I know I can't tell you every time the subject of guns come up, somebody's telling you how great they are. Then you end up shooting with me like, yeah, my daughter was that bad once when she was 12.
She was 12. Yeah, I know. I don't know. I pretty much given up on it. For 18 years, I owned a range facility in Memphis, and we had a big enough, it's 1.5 million people metropolitan area with a very high crime rate. So we had a pretty captive audience there. So we had a series of 5 pistol classes, each one 8 hours long. And the idea was you take one, you practice the stuff you learned in that one for a couple of months, you come back, take the next one, you practice stuff in that for a couple of months. So if you actually did that, it took a year to get through the process. At the end of that, you had 40 hours and 2,000 rounds of training. And people were pretty darn competent at the end of that. And what we found in tracking it over those 18 years is about 60% or 57% of the people who came in and went through the first 8 hours were mandatory in Tennessee to get a carry permit. You had to go through that first class to get a permit to carry. And then everything beyond the first class was your option. About 57% took that first class, checked that state mandated box, and that's it. Never saw them again. The other 43% that took the second level class took all 5. Mm-hmm. So they either were only there to check the box and they're never going to touch the gun again, probably, or they're there to actually learn how to become competent with a handgun, and they wind up taking the whole series almost without fail. Anybody that took level 2 pretty much wound up going through level 5 eventually, and become quite competent with a gun. This is a perfect example of this is guys that get caught at airports with guns in their luggage, in their carry-on luggage. You'd be amazed how often that happens. The Tampa airport here where I live is one of the hot spots for that in the country. Literally hundreds of guns a year seized from people in briefcases and backpacks and whatnot. Most of them are not criminally charged because the U.S. Attorney's Office realizes when they say, I forgot it was in there, they're telling the truth. They honest to God forgot there was a handgun in their backpack or their briefcase or their purse or whatever, because they stuck it in there 3 or 4 years ago and they forgot about it, which means they would no more remember it's in there. If they were being robbed on the street, they would remember that they're going through a TSA checkpoint and can't have a gun on. That's the result. People who buy a gun don't bother to train with it. It's just a magic charm. It's a talisman. So they think, well, I bought it and I dropped it in my backpack. That takes care of it. That's all I should have to do. And then they just wind up getting in trouble. Most crime guns are stolen out of parked cars where the guy's got the gun in the glove box or the console because that's his magic charm again. These people think of that gun as a rabbit's foot. I continually remind them that the rabbit had 4 feet, but somebody caught him, skinned him alive, ate his flesh, and sold his feet as souvenirs. So maybe that's not the best way to look at that pistol. But that 60% that took the permit class and nothing else, that's exactly who they are. They're the rabbit's foot owner. And then the 40%, 43% with enough sense to come in and take additional training were the people who probably ought to be carrying a gun.
Cool. T?
So we have another question. Mark Boynton asks, how do you convince these new shooters to continue beyond the basic requirements of the law, specifically Florida CWL requirements? And we've touched on a few of those concepts throughout the show, but I'll frame it to you this way so that we don't answer it exactly the same way again. Let's say you are the person that is standing at the gun shop, you're at the retail counter, and you have a brand new person coming in saying, I need this gun and I need the license and I'm good. What pearl of wisdom, what little nugget are you going to give them in that moment to awaken them to the fact that there's more? Because most of the time we only get maybe 5-10 minutes with these people max. You're not going to be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and open their eyes to the whole thing. So,
well, this was Mark's question we just talked about, but I think that the only way I've ever found any success with it was to use those analogies I just gave you about jumping out of airplanes without any training or going diving in the ocean without any training. You ask them, would you do that? And they said, well, no, I'm not stupid. Then, okay, then explain why you don't need training with a handgun.
I beg to differ.
Sometimes I don't beg. I just I'm getting crotchety in my old age. But I use those exact 2 examples. Would you do the first? No. Would you do the second? No. Then why the hell would you buy a pistol and think that you're ready to go?
Yeah. There's also some great comments in the live chat about the fact that, ways that you can open people's eyes, and then your own too, about where you're at and where your deficiencies are, is by going and participating at a local match, to see where you're at. It's a unit of measure and a temperature gauge, and then bringing somebody who's brand new to this to witness a match, not to perceive that they're going to be full on ninja the first time they jump in, but to see the variety of abilities and people's proficiencies, just to be able to witness that spectrum.
Yeah. Just to be able to see, just to be able to see what is possible with a handgun, or whatever platform. But typically, we're talking about handgun. Exactly what is possible with one with a bit of training. Somebody that's had just a small amount of training is so much better than somebody with no training in terms of performance. It's just night and day. If you could get them to see that, I think that could be very effective. Most people have no idea. We even get long-time shooters and law enforcement officers wanting to badger them into coming to a class for the first time, and they swagger in thinking they're going to kick butt, and then they leave two steps below last shooter, low score. And sometimes that opens their eyes. Sometimes that works. Sometimes they get embarrassed and never come back. But sometimes that opens their eyes and they say, I do in fact suck and I need to fix that. I need to suck less. And different people have different motivations. I found that being raped and murdered is a real good motivator, but it's a little too late to do anything about it at that point.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
I got a quick question, Tom. Today came up in our Facebook memories. It was 2 years ago to today, Alan, that we took our Rangemaster class with Tom and Lim. And I was curious about the casino drill. Is that yours, Tom? Because that was a fun and effective, and I love that drill.
Yeah, I came up with that one several years ago. I wanted, anytime I design a drill, I try to get everything we can out of that drill. I try to wring every bit of value I can out of whatever ammunition we fire. As you know, having been through combative pistol class, there are no gratuitous rounds. There's no, making noise with the gun. Every round's counted for. And casino drill was designed to give us an opportunity to do a number of things in one drill while under a bit of stress and having to think and run a motor program at the same time. So, that simple little 21-shot drill involves a rapid draw from concealment, multiple shots on multiple targets, having to find, identify, and correctly go to the next target. 2 force reloads on the clock. Not so much because reloads are common in fights, but because it requires to get your hands off the gun, get them back on the gun, and gives task complexity you wouldn't have otherwise. And then the pressure of having to do all this with a time limit. And so we're able to test half dozen critical skills and accomplish quite a bit in 21 rounds in 21 seconds. So that's what I'm always looking for in a drill. What can we accomplish with this to get the absolute maximum value out of the time and ammo? We, as trainers, we never have people as long as we'd like to. Most of my classes, open classes, are 2 and 3 days. So by the time I get you up to where your skills starting to look good and you're receptive to actually learning, it's time to say goodbye. It's a lot more productive if I get you for 5 or 10 days at a time, but obviously we can't do that in the private sector. That's only in the public sector. So we try to wring every minute we can out and every bit of value out of every round we launch. In a 2-day class, our typical round count's around 800 or 900 rounds, which sounds low to a lot of people, but every single one of them's graded, scored, critiqued, and in some manner we get value out of that round in every drill we do throughout that class. And they're all designed to teach some specific thing, or when we get to a certain level of casino is more to test those things, as well as being to keep up with where's the next target, how many rounds have I fired on it, if I had to reload, do I have to go back and finish that target up, which they will have to, and wind up with the right number of shots on every target and be done under the time limit. So when they reach a certain level, drills like that are very useful to give them a bit of stress inoculation and get used to taking in ongoing, evolving information and run the motor program at the same time.
Now, Tom, I think there's a particular agency out there that has 4 guys that may have the top 4 scores recorded on the casino drilling class. Yeah. What agency would that be, Tom?
That's some podunk department in Georgia.
Yeah.
Bunch of good old boys that can shoot. It actually would be your department.
Actually, yeah.
The current record is co-held by a captain there, and then the next 3 best performances are held by other personnel there at that department. So here's a pro tip: don't screw around a lot in Oconee County, Georgia. It's not good for you.
And I'm not one of those 4, so that tells you how good the level of shooting is here. So.
I told Spalding when we all went to his class, he complimented Lee and John on their shooting. I said, hell, they're the worst 2 shots on the whole staff. I brought them here to try to learn.
That drill is really fun when you let somebody else load your mags also. to where you don't know how many are in it, and still come up with a 21.
Yeah. The ideal is not to shoot the drill over and over and over again and get good at shooting the drill. The idea is to get skills involved. So if you just change the number of rounds in the magazine or shoot the targets in different orders and whatnot, there are all sorts of variations. In upper level classes, we do some of those. Because as I said, the idea is to learn the skills, not to learn to beat the drill.
So, folks, hold on 1 second. I just want to say we got 15 minutes left, folks. So everyone who is tuned in currently, please stay with us till the end. We're going to do the usual spiel, upcoming guest, and then stick around for final thoughts. And right now, I will start off with passing and finding out first from Tatiana what you have going on. And Tatiana, if you could pick it up from there and school everybody else and ask them, and then we'll go on to the announcements. So Tatiana, what you got going on? What do you got coming up? Where can people get a hold of you?
Certainly. Of course, as we've discussed earlier, a lot of the programs are all being moved online, at least the ones that are appropriate to. I'm doing quite a bit of private lessons, all of which can be scheduled through my website. Those are 1 hour block programs, and they're very skill set or diagnostic related, and of course, all dry fire. We're getting ready for the A Girl and a Gun National Conference, which is going to be an entirely digital event. We've got 40 plus instructors donating their knowledge and expertise via video and live Q&A and interfacing programs for, I believe it's over a 2-week event this time, so we can stretch it all out because there's only so many hours in the day. We've got a ton of content there. And then I'm moving a lot of my lectures onto live webinars, and the dates for those can be found on my website, and enrollments are limited to, we're keeping them to 20 participants per event so that we have time to answer all questions and whatnot. And all of that can be found at TatianaWhitlock.com, and it's Tatiana Whitlock across all of the social media platforms as well. Alan, what have you got going on?
I'm one of the few people that's very lucky that my business is crazy busy. So that's about all I've had time for. All my, all this normal competition stuff I do is, of course, on indefinite hold, terminal back order, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm just living life, messing with the new garden, doing that deal.
Lee, how about you?
Well, you can find me on all of the internet platforms at First Person Safety, or firstpersonsafety.com. Upcoming classes, the first weekend in May, provided we are able to be back to operating. I've got a new class called Exigent Pistol Craft at the Red Hill Range in Martin, Georgia. May 16th and 17th, I'll be doing Applied Pistol Craft. That will be in Crum, Texas, which is in the Dallas area, north of Dallas. And then June 6th, I will be up in Baraka and Allen Land teaching social lever gun. I've had a lot of internet traffic, emails, phone calls, etc., from people in Virginia wanting to learn how to run a lever gun in a self-defense capacity, because of all the legislative hijinks that were in Virginia earlier in the year. And isn't it funny how all that just kind of disappeared all of a sudden?
No. They did a couple things.
Well, I'm just talking about how nobody's talking about any of that stuff right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's just we all got other things on the plate. But June 6th, social lever gun, and you sign up for that one through Justified Defense Concepts Eventbrite page. They're handling all the registration for that.
And I'll see you there for that one, Lee.
Absolutely. Good.
Ashton, how about you? What's on your schedule?
So again, assuming we can get out from underneath this umbrella of house arrest, May 30th and 31st, I've got Performance Shotgun 2 days in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, Central Pennsylvania, and then Performance Shotgun again in July in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Condition Red is handling the signups for that class. And then here in Pennsylvania, July 25th and 26th, I've got concealed carry pistol and defensive pistol skills. And then the annual Shotgun 360 will be in August here in Pennsylvania again. That's a 2-day shotgun extravaganza. And then later in November, I'll be doing performance pistol down at the FPF range at Murphy's Place, a 2-day performance pistol class down there.
And Tom, how about you?
Well, I'll be going back on the road the middle of May. We've got a pretty packed schedule from then through right through the end of the year. We got class just about every weekend for the next 6 or 7 weekends once I do get back out on the road. You can check rangemaster.com for the schedule all over the country and links to register all those different courses. my email is there. If you've got questions, give me an email. It's hard to catch me on the phone. Send me an email. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And I'll hope to see people back on the road once we get out of the house.
All right, folks, please buckle your seats here for a little bit. I just got to go through my little spiel as always, folks, and then we will come back to our final thoughts. So hang in with us for a few more minutes here. We've got about 10 minutes left. So folks who've inquired about the CCR t-shirts, we're currently doing a pre-order. T-shirts are $20 each. Send a $20 payment, $5 for double XL and larger to PayPal, www.paypal.me/CC Radio. In stock, we currently have 2 mediums, 4 larges, 6 XLs. To become a corporate sponsor or to advertise on the show, please send me an email to baraka3@gmail.com for details. Please share, subscribe, and leave your feedback by commenting at the bottom of the YouTube video if you're tuning in through YouTube. If you have not, please click the link in our show notes and hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate your support. Our website is on the firearmsradio.network. That has the full show notes, including all the links of tonight, everything we've discussed, because there's a truncated version under YouTube, but it has a limited character count, so that's an abbreviated version. On Twitter, we are CC Radio _radio_2A. On Instagram, we're CC_radio2A. On our Facebook page is CC Radio 2A. And here we have 9 of the 137 podcasting stations that play our show. So pick your poison. Just type in Civilian Carry Radio, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, OnSpeaker, Player FM. Please also see our notes for our industry partners: Eritis Industries, 10% off; ATI, 10% off; Battlecomp, 15% off; Big Tex Outdoors, 15% off; Dark Angel Medical, 10% off training and 15% off products; Dark Star Gear Holsters, 10% off; Fire Clean, 10% off; Trident Concepts, 15% off of training. Please join us next Wednesday for our 140th episode with Mr. Reed Hendricks, U.S. Marine and president of Valor Ridge. We will have a guest co-host, Mr. Chris Sideslove, who is now currently the director of training at Blue Force Gear in Georgia and instructor at Forge Tactical up there in Alliance. Also, we have behind him, Marco Moreno, who is my instructor, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt under Grandmaster Helson. Behind that, we have Mr. Drew Estella, who is also a really good close friend, and in the same groups with Mike Panone and Mike Little will be joining him to co-host that. Behind that, we have Mr. Todd Rassa, who was actually referred to us by our good friend Ben and Rachel from On-Site Firearms, and Rachel will be co-hosting that. And right behind that, we have Mr. Steve Moses, who is also a black belt under Master Helson, Grandmaster Helson, and he will be joining us, and our co-host will be Brian Hill. Thank you so much for providing us and putting us in touch with him, Miss Cherub, Tiffany. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate you. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany. All right. So please check out DC Project Rally Gun for Rights. Go to www.dcproject.info. Tatiana is our main representative out of the 50 wonderful women who are doing that and fighting for our rights on Capitol Hill. Robin Sandoval, executive director at A Girl and a Gun, wrote a great article we have in our show notes introducing firearm to women in crisis. And from there, we go to final thoughts. Alan.
First off, I would like to welcome a good friend of ours to the 20th century. I know it's the 21st, but I would like to welcome to the 20th, and that would be Super Dave Harrington has his website up and going. That is combatspeed.com. So welcome to the 20th. We'll get you in the 21st. Tatiana will get you all hooked up with all the social media stuff and get you out there. Check them out at combatspeed.com. So we're all inconvenienced and everything with this corona thing, whatever. I tell you something that I've seen that's really cool. So I grew up in a really close household, even if we didn't have a lot at certain times. We always had each other and we always had a good time together. I grew up playing with my sisters and my brother, and we spent time with the family. We camped and hiked and did all this stuff. I'm seeing that a lot now where I didn't see it before. I see people spending time with their families. I see kids and stuff, you know, at the park or on trails. I see families out together in the garden, out in the yard, places that I pass all the time that I never would see before. So every cloud has a silver lining. I hope we kind of remember all this stuff that, you know, when we weren't out spending money and going out to dinner and the movies and all this stuff, we were doing the stuff that Americans did for generations and generations. So let's keep that. Once this craziness is settled down, let's keep that part of COVID alive. You know, I think that's something that I would really like to see continue going on. So that's my final thought.
Well said, brother. Tatiana, final thoughts.
Well, it's always a pleasure to see you and speak with you, Tom. And of course, we all miss TACCon and the big family reunion that is every year. So we're all looking forward to next year. And thank you for joining us this evening and for sharing a lot of those insights. I know that there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm looking forward to referencing when people ask me those questions. I'm going to be like, so Tom said, and here's the soundbite because Tom said. So thank you again for all of that. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. Ashton Ray, final thoughts, brother.
Well, one of the things that I can only agree with so much because I agree with almost everything the man says. But the biggest thing that I think you said tonight, Tom, was when you want to become a better instructor, you go spend time with somebody that's really good at it. And I just want to thank you personally, for allowing me that opportunity to work with you. I really appreciate it, and I can't thank you enough for all that. So, but for folks that are on the fence about training with Tom, you can't spend your money any better. You really can't. There's nobody better in the industry that's doing this right now. I've trained with lots and lots of people, and just go train with Tom.
Thank you, Ashton. Mr. Lee Weems, final thoughts, brother.
Well, I witnessed something today that I never thought I would witness. There's currently a federal lawsuit going involving the weapons carry license in Georgia. Right now, due to the current situation, the probate courts have decided that issuing the weapons carry license is not an essential function. So for someone who does not have a current weapons carry license, they can't get one. And so a lawsuit has been filed against the Fulton County probate judge, which is Atlanta's the county seat of Fulton County, and against the governor trying to enjoin him against enforcement of the law requiring a carry license. Well, the judge decided to have the hearings over telephone today, and he made the number public so that anyone in the public could dial in and witness the arguments, because he still wanted it to be a public hearing. And this is a federal judge, and they gave instructions on how to mute your line and everything so that only the involved parties would be on the phone. Well, obviously, those instructions didn't get heeded by everybody that dialed in, and somebody put the call on hold and their hold music started playing. That happened twice, and that got the judge upset. He finally ended the public hearing when you heard a woman's voice in the background, and then the husband angrily, "Woman, would you be quiet? I'm trying to listen to that gun case." And at that point in time, the judge says, "That's it. We're out of here. The public call part of this is over. We're just going to do this with just the lawyers." But I never thought that I would see a federal court hearing or hear a federal court hearing being on the phone like it was an internet chat room. But that's where we are today. It's an interesting time, folks, and who knows where we're going to go from here and where we're going to be in the next few months. But then to echo Ashton, thank you, Tom, for everything that you've done for me personally and for the guys here at the Sheriff's Office, and for all of us that you've allowed to come apprentice under you. I'm going to speak for every one of us and thank you for the whole entire group.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
All right, folks, we hold the last final thought for our guest. That is Tom. So let me say my little spiel. I wanted to echo almost around the room what everyone has already said. First and foremost, thank you so much for your time, Tom. You are an icon in the industry. With the groundwork that you've laid, I feel like out of every industry, out of every coach, trainer, teacher, educator in the current, who's currently practicing. Like, you have done such a good job paying it forward and setting up the future for our country. I mean, literally, with all the people that you certified, because I don't know where we'd be if you hadn't stood this program up. I mean, a lot of that stuff could have just, when you decided to say, hey, I'm going to go and drink Mai Tais on the beach the rest of my life, we might have been left behind in the dust. So
we'd have had a lot fewer guests on the show, that's for sure.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, we'd have been, that's a great point, Alan. I never thought of that. So thank you for what you've done for all of us, though.
We do firearms training and talent agency.
Yes, indeed. Amen, you are. And I also wanted to echo back what Alan was saying and a little bit of what Lee was saying. We don't know what a post-pandemic world is going to look like, but one of the things that it has come of it is I've seen so much good-hearted goodwill to people and families coming together and people bonding out to help each other and reaching out, checking on people. I feel like it's taken us back off of, a lot of us, yes, still on the internet, but brought humanity back to our homes. And it's just beautiful to see all of the people coming together to help each other out. And like I said, again, the family being tight. Folks, I want to thank everyone in our live chat, both on Facebook and YouTube, for joining us tonight. You guys make this feel like a family atmosphere. It is such a warm energy, and we are appreciative of each and every one of you guys who took busy time out of your place tonight to be here with us. This is the camaraderie we want to do. We want to unite our community and bring people closer together and make sure that people understand how much great people are involved in this. And we're not these crazy life anti-whatever that sometimes we get pointed a bad picture of. And you guys are great. So thank you so much for that. With that, let me pass off the final thought to Mr. Tom Givens. Thank you.
This current crisis has been kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people. They're letting felons out of jail so that they don't get sick, and predictably quite a few of them have already been rearrested within 24 hours for violent crimes, including murder. At the same time, in a number of the big cities, police have announced that they're not going to respond at all to a whole laundry list of various crimes that aren't the most serious major offenses. The truth is, it's always been like that. It's just that people are just now becoming aware of it. You've always been on your own. In your introduction to the podcast here, you mentioned that you alone are responsible for you and your family's safety and security. And people, I think, are starting to see that now. And it doesn't have to be a pandemic. It could be an earthquake, it could be a hurricane, it could be riots. The government checks don't come out 1 month. You see what that leads to. Major disruption of the food supply, all sorts of different things. Civilization is kind of a thin crust, and you can break through it fairly easily. So I think people are just starting to wake up and realize that you are, in fact, on your own. And smart people are going to do something to put themselves in a better position the next time this comes around. Hopefully we're on the downward slope of this one now, but there'll be another one. People need to understand that it's not paranoid to be prepared, and that's what people need to work toward. And thanks for having me. It's always a hoot to be here. You guys are great.
Thank you so much for being here for us, and we really appreciate you. Thank you, Ashton. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Alan. And folks, speaking of Tom, his other half, his very much lovelier half, in the words of our friend, mentor, Lynn Givens, I do not carry a pistol so I can impose my will on someone else. I carry a pistol so someone else cannot impose their will on me. Also from Mr. Tim Reddy, for me, and what I encourage people to do is if they're going to carry, is to carry as an act of love. It is not because of fear or hate or anger, but we carry because we love life, we love our families, and that is something worth protecting by Mr. Tim Reddy. And as our friend from the Netflix icon, Tiger King, says, and in case you missed it last week, good night to everybody except that Carol Bastion. And folks, Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. Good night. Please take care. Stay safe. Be positive. Remain vigilant. God bless you guys all. Take care. Thank you. All righty. We are off.